So, I guess my question is for Christian or Andy. Are we getting started here? I mean, you're the chair people. No sign of Barry or Paul.
It's a good question. I didn't schedule the meeting. Christian, do you know? Well, actually, Christian seems to be on Zulip only. So let me see if I can ping somebody.
That's pretty bad.
All right, I've pinged them. We'll see what happens. Was an agenda published for this meeting?
Yes, and slides.
Okay.
They were approved by Barry.
Oh, odd, because I thought Barry was traveling this week.
I mean, he approved the slides. It doesn't mean he's.
So looking in Zulip, Paul was active 14 days ago. Christian is idle right now. I can't see Barry, but he's traveling, so maybe he's not relevant.
Okay, I've pinged in multiple places, so we'll see what happens.
I mean, Andy, what do you think about continuing the meeting without a chair?
I am not hot about that idea.
Yeah.
The problem there is that we'd be having to catch them up and yeah, and there are some things that I'm not prepared to step in as a interim chair to try to figure out. So I normally have a meeting at this time, a standing meeting, but it got canceled. I was like, oh, I'll try and I'll see if I can attend the CBOR meeting, and then yeah.
Yeah. Last week we had a lot more attendees than today. And of course, we had a chair. So,
Well, we still could do hallway stuff. So, for instance, I just responded to your one-liner, and I would be very interested in your response. We probably have to document that in the mailing list afterwards, but we still can have higher bandwidth communication now.
Yeah, I don't see a reason why not. So
okay. I mean, it's kind of not the agenda. So, I mean, that's okay, but yeah. So I'm not even sure we have anybody else participating here. I mean,
You
Rohan.
should see 6 participants.
Yeah, I know, but Rohan prefers to postpone. I think this. I think I would prefer that too, or discuss it on the mailing list.
okay, what's the college rule? 15 minutes and class is over. Is that it?
Oh.
So let's see if they respond, and then
Okay.
at 15 after we can call it quits.
Okay.
Just got a comment from Paul. All right, so Paul will be here in 1 minute. So, well, that was close, huh?
Yeah.
Well, that is certainly one way to mess up a meeting. I deeply apologize. I had it on for tomorrow.
Okay. Glad you're here.
Well, did you guys start?
No.
No.
Okay. Well, were you not able to start because I didn't do this?
Who you
Oh,
getting?
wait. I gave it to Andy. Never mind. Sorry. You can tell I am rushing around. Let's see. No, I don't want slides control. I want Lawrence to have slides control. Again, deep apologies for this. Sorry. Okay, pretend that it's 15 minutes ago. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So not too many of us today, but let's see. There we go. So first I'm going to do status update on the draft. We published, or I published the O2 draft. It has a new section on recommendations, a new section on when to use general serialization, which pulled some content out of other parts of the document and I thought was a better organization. It has a new section on special serializations, which are those that are not ordinary or deterministic. It has an new appendix on big numbers in the data model, explaining that the definition of tag 2 and 3 modify the data model. It's an appendix because it's something most people don't need to understand to implement. There's a new appendix on how to implement big numbers. I think both of those appendixes might need some tweaking. Neither of them discuss the topic, the last topic for today, which is where to put the language that says that future tags can't modify the data model. There's a new appendix that makes an example about serialization in COSE. I use COSE as an example in a number of places in the document, and I thought it would be worthwhile to put it all together in one place. That integration is not entirely complete, but I chose this because COSE has several parts that have serialization requirements or not, and it's interesting to discuss those. Then it was a small change, but for decoding of big numbers, leading zeros and empty string you must decode those now. They used to be shoulds in RFC 89. Now they're a must. So that is a small divergence from RFC 8949 in terms of yeah, Kirsten.
Can you quickly say why you say this at a place where you're essentially using preferred serialization, which doesn't have these two cases. So why are we allowing them now?
So this is a must on the decode side for ordinary serialization and
Yes.
deterministic serialization.
Yes, both don't have leading zeros or empty strings.
Yeah, that's true. Basically, this is kind of a Pastel was right thing. It's an interoperability thing. I'm happy to discuss that, but I don't think that's on the agenda today.
Okay. Yeah. So
And it's important that the decode rules for ordinary are very clear. So that's kind of where we go, how we got here. But
yeah, that's the discussion we just were having on the mailing list.
yeah.
Because the rule is decode CBOR, and that should be all you need to say there.
Yeah, that I think is I think there's a discussion to be had there, but I don't think it's on the agenda today, and I would like to stick to the agenda. Okay, so there's there's still 8 open issues. I closed a bunch of them that were didn't seem like they were progressing. I was, for example, waiting for Anders to resolve consensus over something he wants to have done on the mailing list. So I just closed those issues, and Anders can reopen them or drive the consensus or whatever he wants to do there. The top one there is the main action item on that is where to write down the prohibition against future tags modifying the data model. The recommendation section is in there now. It's pretty good, but I read it over and I think it needs some improvements. So that's on the agenda for today. Paul?
I think it would be grand if we didn't worry so much about the where we put in things. There's this belief about appendices being different than the main body and such like that. For something like this, I would love to see something with no appendices, but short of that, please don't worry about the where, get the wording right, and then we can decide later what's the best organization, because really the best organization is for somebody, a year from now who has not followed this at all coming in.
Yeah, okay. Maybe, Paul, you want to file an issue about that? I mean, there's kind of this issue there already, but you're asking a bigger question, and then
Sure. Okay, I'll open an issue on that.
Yeah. So also on the agenda today is just naming discussion, and then there's Rohan wants some extra security considerations. That's for him to work on. Some progress on test vectors, but nothing that's in the document yet. And then a couple of things that I think that are straightforward to address that don't just require much discussion. So there's 2 open PRs. Rohan's general review, which has been a little difficult to process because it's a bunch of different things all over the document, but I'm sorry I haven't done as much on that as I should. Then Anders made some comments about the section on when to use deterministic serialization is unclear, so I made some improvements for that. Okay, so let's move on to the recommendations section, unless someone else another brief question or comment. Okay. So this is what I took away from our discussion a couple of weeks, 2 weeks ago, I guess. And this is the way I've done this described this, I've made a clear distinction between a framework protocol and an end-to-end protocol. I don't think this is a formal definition, and I don't think it is, some sort of absolute binary classification, but I think the distinction is actually quite useful, and it really helps to frame the discussion and make the discussion work. So framework protocol, I mean, CBOR is one too, but CWT, COSE are framework protocols in that they have a lot of options, no negotiation mechanism. They don't really have a goal that two implementations are going to interoperate without some additional help. They're very flexible for what they're trying to do. We're end-to-end protocols like FIDO and TLS. I mean, I would consider like TCP and IP end-to-end protocols. They really have to guarantee interoperability between conforming implementations. They just can't rely on libraries doing the right thing or something like that. So I really thought this distinction was really useful because one of the big differences between what happens in a framework protocol and an end-to-end protocol is what you do about serialization. The framework protocol, you can be open about serialization. You don't say anything about serialization. You let the deploying environment decide. For an end-to-end protocol, you really got to specify serialization, and so the text in the document says framework protocols should say nothing about serialization, just like CWT and COSE say nothing, except for some cases where you have to have deterministic, but they're actually quite rare. And it says that if it's an end-to-end protocol, you must specify serialization somehow. And it recommends that you say use ordinary serialization or deterministic if you want. Even though maybe you don't need deterministic for the use case, but it's acceptable because deterministic is a reasonable stand-in for ordinary in most cases. So let me do the next slide, and then we can have some discussion. So this, what I just described was for the protocol specification. This is for libraries, very different thing. So it says CBOR libraries should use ordinary serialization as a default. So that's like when they encode, they should make ordinary serialization the default. I think the wording in the document is better than here. It also says, I believe it says they must be able to decode ordinary serialization. It also suggests they support deterministic because some use cases require it. And it says you can support deterministic in place of ordinary, but that's primarily on the encode side because the decoding for ordinary and deterministic, there is no difference between the two. The only reason you don't do deterministic all the time is because it's expensive to sort in some environments. So that's the recommendation for CBOR libraries. It's just a recommendation. The library are going to implement what they want to implement at the time. What they've gotten around to is typically what happens. So, no strong requirement there. So framework protocol libraries, again, suggests they use ordinary serialization and, may use deterministic. End-to-end protocol libraries, there isn't anything in the document about that. That's something I think needs to be added. But they basically should say there that they should, or they really have to adhere to whatever the end-to-end protocol document says. Okay, so let's just have discussion here on that. Rohan, you wrote a comment. I assume you can't speak.
I believe he's still on a train.
Yeah. Okay. So you saying nothing in a framework protocol is not a feature. So we should say something in a framework protocol. I'm not sure what to say there. Karsten?
Yeah, assuming we are using this dichotomy of framework protocols and end-to-end protocols, that's a little bit problematic, but I understand the intention. The framework protocol is in a much better situation to say something about what end-to-end protocols should say about serialization than this document ever will be. So I think that's a pretty important consideration. I also would like to point out that there are protocols where I don't know whether they are framework or end-to-end protocols. Let's ignore that for a second. That do have specific serialization requirements when they are directly used within media types that belong to the specification. So you probably would call them end-to-end protocols then, but which also can be used in greater contexts in other media types. And maybe the specification is more on the framework side then. So one example for that is the constraint resource identifier, which has some text about serialization for using the media types defined in the document, but really opens this up for putting these CRIs into other environments. Okay, so these were two items. Well, CRIs are also an example where we do definite length only as the serialization constraint, because that's what we care about, enabling the partial implementations. Otherwise, we use CBOR.
Yeah, Paul?
So I think what I'm hearing from Karsten and from Rowan is that it is okay for a framework protocol to say something, but I'm not clear whether we should say that in this document. We don't say that framework protocols can't. We suggest that maybe they don't. And maybe what I'm hearing from Karsten and from Rowan is that we even dial that back. So we have a definition of a framework protocol that doesn't necessarily have any serialization, and say why, because it's just a framework. And then, as you have already done in the current draft, push hard on the end-to-end protocols.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, there's some framework protocols. It might be a framework protocol because of nothing to do with CBOR, just because they have, I don't know, lots of crypto algorithm options or something like that. And some framework protocol definitions might be so clear that they're going to be used in giant data centers and never on small devices that they want to be specific about serialization. So yeah, I think that's it should be something like, if you think this protocol needs the variability for constrained environments on serialization, then don't say anything. If you want to be really clear um, about serialization in a framework protocol, you can be, yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay. Yeah, see your comment, Michael. Go ahead, Karsten.
When we're done with this slide, the next slide is interesting because it essentially cuts off the last 12 years of using CBOR, because ordinary serialization is not a default in existing protocol specifications. So again, we have to distinguish between the encoder and the decoder. So a unilateral decision by an encoder to use preferred serialization plus definite length only is a good thing. We should encourage that. I don't know if this is RFC 2119 should, because that means something different. The other question is what is a decoder library supposed to do? And there our recommendation still should be that this should be able to decode CBOR unless there are constraints, both in the sense of being constrained devices or in the sense of being high performance implementations, that make more sense for definite length only. Then they should make that decision. But we haven't really found a reason why we want libraries to reject valid CBOR as a default. I don't know why we would be doing that.
Okay, so this is the requirement for ordinary serialization on the decode side is to be able to decode all the things in ordinary serialization. So
I don't think
it
so.
must.
Why
How do you
can't I
not?
have an implementation that doesn't do floating point if my application doesn't need floating point?
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna take this to the mailing list.
Yes.
I don't want to have. And read the document carefully, because I think it addresses that.
Maybe my main comment is stop using the word use, because you are not saying whether you are making a
Read the
constraint on the encoder
please
or
read the
a
document.
constraint on the decoder.
Please comment on the language in the document. This is a slide. It's not the final language. This is just a slide. Okay, any other comments on the recommendations here for just the recommendations in general? So I take it there's some consensus and some happiness about this framing. Okay. I mean, I actually really would like to have fairly positive and good consensus on some of this. I want to be sure we have a lot of consensus on this document, so I'm willing to do a lot of work and take time to make sure we really have consensus, because I think that's actually pretty important, and we don't end up with a document that was kind of pushed through too quickly and didn't really have the thinking done behind it. I think we have the time to do the consensus here.
So, Lawrence, wearing my chair hat, you are welcome to ask for interim consensuses on parts. Like it sounds like you just did here now.
Yeah.
It is fine for you to do that on the mailing list and to say, do we have consensus, even, or at least rough consensus for now, that the stuff in section 2 Not that they are recommendations, but the breakdown of
Yeah.
framework end-to-end in libraries is good. You're welcome to do that at any time and to use the results of that if there aren't strong objections to keep moving forwards.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Which is what I will do. So. Okay. So let's have some discussion on naming goals. The naming. What I was after in the name ordinary was, to convey that it's kind of everyday broad use. It's what everyone else does. It's an easy choice. Like if I'm not very smart about serialization, which like 90% of the people are, if I just pick the one with the friendly name, the obvious name, I'm going to be okay. So I'm actually not that set on the name ordinary. I'm probably okay with most of the others. So Karsten?
I sent a message to the mailing list on this subject. I think there are several people who have said that they don't like ordinary serialization without saying why they don't like it. So I take that as a given, although I'm not entirely convinced that the reasons are good ones. But I looked at what you are trying to achieve here. And you are essentially trying to create a new mainstream for CBOR. And maybe we could just use that term and call the thing mainstream serialization, because it's used in all places that are kind of like the ones we have been to before. But it's definitely not a recommended serialization. It's not a simple serialization. I don't know about normal. Yeah, I think mainstream is actually capturing the attempt here to re-steer the CBOR community into a specific guidance best.
Yeah, okay. What about basic? Okay.
Yeah, so the problem really with basic is that sounds like the simplest thing to implement, and ordinary serialization definitely is not. So it's much easier to throw something together based on the generic CBOR serialization, and well, you trust that your communication partner implements CBOR, but that's maybe a given if they actually implement CBOR. So you can do things like what IPFS did by saying, we like preferred serialization, but let's send floating point in 64 bits always. Yeah, I don't like that, but I would really enable them to do something, even if I would consider this misguided when they ask me.
And also saying basic indicates that there is also an advanced, and that's not what we want to indicate. I think that what you had said before was our intentions are these, and mainstream meets those intentions. Then everything else, if someone goes, well, what are the other ones? The other ones will all be less than mainstream, which is what we also want them to think.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, mainstream, I agree that mainstream does line up pretty well with the intent. I mean, give me a few minutes to get used to it. hipster serialization. Okay. I don't know. I don't know about that. Some people don't want to be hipsters. All right. Any more comments on that? We can move on to the next topic. Oh no. Okay. All right. Next topic. Okay. So we have a consensus that future tag definitions are not allowed to modify the CBOR data model in the way that tags 2 and 3 do. So basically, we want to say tags are not allowed to modify the data model. Tags 2 and 3 are grandfathered in. And we need to say this somewhere so that it happens. Clearly, the IANA CBOR tag experts need to know, but probably we need to say it somewhere else. I didn't put it in the document, in the serialization document yet, because I thought it was too specific to data models and had no tie-in to serialization. But let's talk about it. So, Karsten?
Yeah, so first, I would like to echo what Paul said. We should maybe worry less about where we put things right now and make sure that we have consensus on the content.
Yep.
I'm not sure that changing the data model is exactly evoking what we are trying to no longer allow. But that's editorial. I just would like to observe that this is a change that is relatively innocuous because it concerns the future and not backwards compatibility. And it's a change that we want because it simplifies the role of naive components in serialization. So I would be happy having that in a serialization document, but again, we can decide that later when we have written up what exactly it is that we are agreeing on.
Yeah, I'm fine putting it in the document for now, and so we have the text written down, and then we can think about if we put it somewhere else or not. But yeah, I'll certainly put the text in the document, and in the next revision of the document, we'll have some text for that, and then we can discuss if it stays there or go somewhere else. I'm totally fine with that.
So right now you have Appendix E where you are bringing up the subject,
Yes.
but you're not saying anything normative here.
Right.
Okay.
And since this is normative text, by my thinking of how the document is factored, I would not put that in an appendix. But that's something to discuss.
Yeah, speaking as an occasional draft writer, I would spend an entire section for this because it's actually something that in the end updates 8949.
Yes.
And that probably is coming later in the main body of the document because it wants to make use of things that already have been said. But the actual section should be very short.
Yeah. Sounds right. Okay.
Just wearing my co-chair hat, having just talked with the AD, put the text in. We will figure out, we being like the chairs and the ADs will figure out whether it should be in the final document or not, or if it should be extracted. One of the interesting things is that some IANA registries already have a zillion rules written in them that clearly didn't come from RFCs. And once a registry is created, it is under the control of the IESG, not the working group. So we'll figure out what to do with whatever idea the working group comes up with, has consensus on, and we'll figure out where to instantiate it.
Yeah. I'll put it in. I may try an experiment where I create a data model draft just to see how it looks. That would just be an experiment, and see how if it clarifies or it doesn't, or the combined is better or something. But I'll probably try that experiment at some point. The other comment I have is that a Wolf and CBOR, they will probably want to write that requirement in their document as well, just to be clear that depending on the timing of publication and stuff like that, they may not want to rely on whatever we publish. And I think that's quite reasonable as long as it's saying the same thing. Yeah, I don't know if I can read that and comprehend that in real time there that you wrote, Karsten.
Yeah, I just was trying to point out that we have done something like that already. So we have tags that are registered. They are doing things which we don't like them to do. But there are well-defined areas of applications where they work, for instance, deterministic encoding or not using maps. So they are still registered. They are not deprecated in any way, but the definition of new tags with this property is not recommended. It's what the end of the
Right.
paragraph says.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah. Okay, that's all I've got. This was useful. Thank you.
Okay, and again, one last time, sorry for showing up 15 minutes late, which forced you to wait around. Thank God for Signal, where I got messages from a couple people going, hello. So if there's nothing else for Lawrence for today, he's got a bunch of things. A couple of us also have new at least issues to open. And we will discuss on the list whether we should have a meeting in 2 weeks, and it will be on my calendar. Any last things for Lawrence? Okay, well, thank you, and I'm glad that I didn't push us over the time limit on this. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Paul. Bye. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.